Donald Trump is a great threat to our democracy. What is a democracy? What are the pillars? What are the pillars? A free and independent press to tell the story of what's going on, to keep everybody informed. Donald Trump has the worst record of job loss of any president. So we just have to make sure people know.
That was a global pandemic.
He had the worst record of any president. We've had other concerns in our country. If you want to be an apologist for Donald Trump, that may be your role.
You just witnessed Nancy Pelosi proudly display her hypocrisy in the context of the same interview, the same conversation within 3 minutes. That was incredible. She goes from fear-mongering about Donald Trump and his lack of respect for freedom of the press, and then goes on to accuse an anchor at MSNBC, Katie Tur, of being an apologist for Donald Trump for simply stating a fact. That was an incredible moment, and she should be called out for it.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. We gotta talk about a very telling clip from Nancy Pelosi on CNN, okay? You have this interview between Nancy Pelosi and Jake Tapper. And Jake Tapper is actually going to ask Nancy Pelosi some tough questions, but framed in a way that is as soft as possible, right? Because this is what they do when Democrats are on, right? They don't want to ask Democrats tough questions, but when they have to ask Democrats tough questions, they try to frame it in a way that's as soft as possible, okay? This is what they try to do, right? And that's what Jake Tapper did when he confronted Nancy Pelosi about Kamala Harris's word salads and her reaction to the fact that Kamala Harris doesn't really answer questions when asked about the economy, her specific plans that are going to help the working class, and also the fact that she's running away from the media, right? She's not doing any interviews, and voters kind of feel like they're not getting enough out of her. And considering how the election is extremely close, this is obviously a problem. This is an issue, which again is a legitimate question to ask from the media. But my gut feeling is that Nancy Pelosi doesn't think so. And I want to talk about it. But first, speaking of hiding, I have to tell you guys how to hide your personal information online. And that is why the sponsor of this video is Aura. Today's video is sponsored by Aura, and now is a very important time to be talking about them because hackers may have stole the social security numbers of every American. Over 2.9 billion records were stolen from national public data, which provides information to employers, staffers, recruiting agencies, and others doing background checks. These stolen records include a person's full name, date of birth, address, and most importantly, their social security number. And members of this hacker group have reportedly released this information online for free, which is insane to think about and kind of makes me uncomfortable, to be honest with you guys. So if you haven't been taking precautions with your personal information online before, now should be a wake-up call because you've never been more vulnerable online than you are right now. But me personally, I'm not too worried because I use Aura. Aura monitors your personal data, such as your social security number, across billions of data points, including the dark web and public court records, and alert you on any potential identity theft. They will give you up to $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst case scenario happen. They also provide you a bunch of other features to keep you safe online, all included in one app. You can go to my link at aura.com/BCP to get a 14-day free trial, and that is just enough time for Aura to figure out if any of your data has been exposed. I highly recommend you do this now because national public data is not going to do anything to help you out, and they're definitely not going to face any repercussions for allowing this leak. I'm not leaving myself or my family open to data breaches, and I don't think that you should either. So if you want to give it a try, you can go to aura.com/BCP to try 2 weeks for free.
This ad attempts to be a fairly straightforward presentation in answering the question of how exactly she would address the cost of living crisis, which has not always been the case in some of these more unscripted moments that we've heard from the candidate herself. In interviews with CNN's Dana Bash or the Philadelphia's Channel 6 or Oprah, Harris has been asked to outline some specific things she would do to help working people pay for things if elected. And each time she began, well, take a listen.
When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that people are ready for a new way forward.
I grew up a middle-class kid. My mother raised my sister and me. She worked very hard. Yours is a story I hear around the country as I travel. And in terms of both rightly having the right to have aspirations and dreams and ambitions for your family.
In some cases, it has taken nearly 2 minutes before Vice President Harris actually arrives at describing her policies. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is here with us to discuss. Do you think she needs to be presenting more meat on the bones of, I get that she's from a middle-class family, it's great, and I get that she feels people's pains, great, but what about, like, here are the 5 things I'm going to do directly for you? Does she need to be doing more of that?
Well, she'll be doing some of that tomorrow when she'll put forth her economic plan. But people like to have a connection to whoever is running for office, that they share their experience, that they understand their lives. And I think that's what she is establishing. But I never give advice to presidential candidates. The wisdom that they have, the political astuteness that they have to become the presidential candidate says they know something about the market out there.
Do you think that she needs to be mixing it up more, having a press conference, more town halls, just out and about more? Oprah's the queen, obviously, but that's not a tough interview sitting down with Oprah. Oprah's endorsed her. She spoke at the convention. Does she need to be doing more of that sort of thing?
She will make that decision in her campaign agenda and her plan. Officially, I know her. Policy-wise, she has strength. Mm-hmm. She knows the issues. She knows the strategy. She's eloquent in her presentation.
Well, I know she has your vote, but it's neck and neck. It is. I've never seen an election this tight at this point. Usually somebody has an edge at this point. That could change, but it's neck and neck. In the battlegrounds, it's neck and neck. So I do wonder, it seems like she's running kind of cautiously, and I wonder, does she need to take more risks?
Well, I would say, since you said, she has my vote, I wasn't speaking about myself, because that's one vote. I'm talking about, I was in 3 states last week, not counting California and Washington, where I began then. And the enthusiasm out there is great for her.
Yeah, so you're seeing that, okay? Jake Tapper, although he was trying to make those questions land as soft as possible, he still was asking good questions, right? He showed a clip of Kamala Harris doing a word salad, trying to avoid answering a question about the economy, how she's going to lower costs. And he presents that to Nancy Pelosi. And he's like, hey, do you think that maybe she should come up with better answers, right? She should actually answer the question, right? Which, again, is a good question for Nancy Pelosi. And Nancy Pelosi basically does what Kamala does, which is to not really kind of answer the question. I guess Nancy Pelosi tries to justify it by saying that, well, she needs to let people know what her background is and that she can relate to them and yada, yada, yada. But what Nancy Pelosi doesn't realize is that nobody gives a damn about that, right? And I also find it to be hilarious that Nancy Pelosi said that, well, I trust Kamala in what she's doing because of the fact that she became the presidential candidate in the first place, right? So I don't need to give her advice. And I'm like, well, she didn't get it by getting votes, right? She actually has not had a successful primary in the sense that she actually earned anybody's vote to become the Democrat Party nominee. So trusting the instincts of somebody who never won a primary, I just think it's funny, right? I think it's funny that she said that, okay? But clearly, these are questions that aren't necessarily easy questions for Nancy. And apparently Nancy Pelosi does not like being asked any question that's not a complete and total softball, because she went off on Jake Tapper. I mean, totally snapped on the guy for showing her a clip of Trump trashing Kamala Harris and her cognitive abilities, right? Basically questioning Kamala Harris's competence. And let's just say that Nancy Pelosi was not very happy that Jake Tapper decided to show her that clip and then to ask her this question about Kamala. Take a look.
I'm sure that you hear from progressive voters, Democratic voters who say, as I hear from them on social media, the media made such a big deal out of Joe Biden's alleged cognitive problems? Why don't they talk about Donald Trump's cognitive problems? Well, Donald Trump talked about that just a second ago, and I want to get your reaction. Let's run that clip.
They laugh at us all over the world. They're laughing at us. And you know what they're really laughing at? Kamala, because they can't believe that she's going to be president. They can't believe. You talk about cognitive problems? She's got bigger cognitive problems than he has, in my opinion.
Donald Trump saying that Kamala Harris has bigger cognitive problems than Joe Biden.
Why would you even cover that? This is a person who's not on the level. He is their nominee for president. He is incompetent. Let's not even talk about the silliness of it all and the weirdness of it all and the assault on women that it is. We're not going to talk issues. Incompetent. The only thing he did as president, when he had the majority, was to pass a bill that gave a tax cut that gave 83 of the benefits to the top 1%, adding $2 trillion to the national debt. The worst job creation record of anybody president since Herbert Hoover.
Because of COVID, yes.
Well, it's not because of COVID. We put $3 trillion into the economy when he was president, working with and the Congress working together. We put $3 trillion into the economy. So don't blame it on. And what did he do with COVID? Denial and delay, responsible for thousands and thousands of people dying. So if you're going to forgive his job record because of COVID, make sure you attribute many of those deaths to him as well.
Not forgiving anything, just noting the content.
Incompetent. Forget silly and crazy and crooked and all the rest. Incompetent.
Let me just say, why do I run that clip? I run that clip because that's the Republican presidential nominee, and I thought you might have a reaction to it.
Wow, that clip is so telling, especially in the context of all the other clips we have of Nancy Pelosi going off on the Democrat propagandists who attempt to do journalism, right, when asking her questions. Like, for example, what you guys saw at the beginning of this video, Nancy Pelosi did a similar thing on MSNBC. MSNBC, by the way, I want you guys to understand how ridiculous this is, how delusional Nancy is. She basically accused one of the hosts of being a Trump apologist for basically giving proper context to the claims that the job losses that happened during COVID were Trump's fault, right? When everybody knows it wasn't Trump's fault. It happened because of the pandemic. And also on top of that, Democrats were pro-lockdowns. They were pro putting people out of work, right? Which, again, that's why it makes zero sense to criticize Trump for job losses when Democrats were supporting job losses, right? Trump was supporting keeping the economy open, which would have been good for jobs. Again, it's just funny how that works, right? Blame Trump for the things that Democrats promoted and pushed in their states. Fascinating, okay? But Jake Tapper basically did the same thing that MSNBC host did and gave context when Nancy Pelosi tried to blame the job losses under Trump on him and not the virus. He basically said, well, no, those jobs were lost because of the pandemic, because of the virus. And Nancy Pelosi gets mad, right? She snaps at Jake Tapper for basically adding proper context, right? Doing journalism, doing a little bit of fact checking. Again, this is a soft fact check. He didn't call her a lie, right? He didn't explicitly say that's not true, okay? He did a soft fact check and Nancy Pelosi lost her mind, right? It shows you the entitlement of these individuals. They really feel like, Democrats really feel like they should not be questioned by the media. The media has to be on their team 100% or else they're pro-Trump, right? That's what it is, okay? I mean, I did a video a couple days ago about John Fetterman. John Fetterman was asked by one of the propagandists at one of these liberal media networks about Kamala Harris and himself flip-flopping on the issue of fracking. This guy is like, why are you asking me about fracking when Trump and J.D. Vance are talking about eating cats and dogs?
I know you've talked about this quite a bit. Vice President Harris, as you know, once supported a ban on fracking when she was running for president in 2020. She even sued the Obama administration to prevent fracking off California's coast. Now she says she will not ban the practice as president. Why should voters trust that that is really what the vice president believes?
It's so strange why we just keep talking about fracking. Back in 2020, I said that that might be an issue, but it's not going to be a defining issue. And now in 2024, we're still trying to talk about fracking. And now the other side, they're talking about eating cats and geese and dogs and saying absurd things and talking about how if Trump doesn't win, he said that, you have to blame the Jews on that, and just absurd things, like having a serious policy conversation when the other side is just absolutely on fire. And here's where we are, and here we are also that it's going to be very close in Pennsylvania, and it's not going to be defined by fracking.
Well, we are talking about it because, of course, it supported 120,000 jobs back in 2022. Let me read you some of what you have said about fracking. In 2016, you called it a stain on Pennsylvania. In 2018, you said you don't support fracking at all. But then in 2022, you said you absolutely support fracking. Senator, what exactly do you like about fracking now?
It's strange for some weird gotcha, kind of taking quotes out of context. And, here I am now. I'm a United States Senator, and I won by 5 points, a record margin back in 22. And again, it might be an issue in fracking, and I fully support fracking. So does the Vice President Harris. And now if you want to have a serious conversation about policy, then I would challenge Trump and Vance to have one other than talking about eating pets.
And we'll have plenty of questions for Senator Lindsey Graham. There's no doubt about that. But to the point, what do you now like about fracking? You say you're not going to ban it. You support it now.
They're eating dogs. They're eating cats. Again. So, okay. Yes. And any more on fracking? I think.
Yeah. So Democrats legitimately feel like it is off limits for a journalist to ask them hard questions, right? Seriously, right? Like they're just like, no hard questions, okay? If you ask me hard questions, I'm going to get mad at you and ask, why are you not talking trash about Trump, right? Why are you not doing what you do for 24 hours out of the day, every single day? Why are you not doing more of that in this interview with me, right? Why do you actually feel the need to get answers from me, right? I should have to answer questions. This is something they just believe across the board, right? This is what their party thinks, right? And here's the crazy part about it. These journalists are scared. One of the reasons why you see these softball interviews with Democrats is because they're afraid of losing access to these Democrats, right? Because Democrats will basically threaten to boycott the networks, to not come on the networks if they get hard questions, right? That's 100% what's going on. If you look at the difference between the interviews that people like Kamala Harris, Nancy Pelosi, John Fetterman, look at the tone of the interview. Look at how these so-called journalists, these Democrat propagandists, look at how they interview Democrats versus Republicans. With Republicans, they're completely adversarial, right? They are always asking tough question after tough question after tough question. Okay, they're always trying to fact check, but with Democrats, they just let Democrats say whatever. And if they push back on Democrats just a little bit, Democrats lose their minds. They lose their minds. Nancy Pelosi lost her mind over Jake Tapper played a clip of Trump questioning Kamala Harris's cognitive abilities, and he did it in a way that's a layup. He did it in a way to give Nancy Pelosi the opportunity to freely respond to Trump, probably to try to question Trump's cognitive abilities, to say that Trump is dumb, to say a whole bunch of stuff about Trump that he probably would not even have pushed back on, right? To be honest with you, okay? But she couldn't even do that. She was offended by the fact that he would even play a clip like that, right? The fact that he would even bring up the conversation of, hey, maybe there's some issues with Kamala, like there was some issues with Joe Biden, which I personally think is a very legitimate conversation, because I don't think that Kamala Harris is much better off than Joe Biden is right now. To be honest with you, I really don't. Again, especially considering how she can't figure out how to answer questions without filibustering for 3 minutes straight, right? Which apparently is such a big issue that even Jake Tapper has taken notice of it, right? It's so funny how that works. All the things that we say on the right, at first they're conspiracies until they turn out to be correct, right? Like, for example, they kept telling us how, oh, no, there's nothing wrong with Biden, right? Those are cheap fakes that you guys are seeing, right? Biden malfunctioning in public, right? Cheap fakes, don't believe it, right? Now we have the mainstream media catching up with Kamala Harris and her word salads, right? Which is something we've been calling out for 4 or 5 years straight, right? Now, all of a sudden, they're now presenting Democrats with these word salads from Kamala Harris, and they're saying, hey, don't you think this is kind of weird, right? Don't you think that this is turning people off? Okay, do you think that this is a good look for Kamala Harris, right? Again, it's just so funny how alternative media, right? I'm not a journalist, okay? I wasn't trained in that. But it's so funny how we're so much further ahead than the media, the mainstream media, people that are supposed to be trained in this type of stuff. Why is it that we're so much further ahead than they are, right? Why is it that we know this stuff before they do? We knew that Joe Biden was cognitively declining before they did. Either these people are not very good at their jobs, or they will sacrifice their own integrity for the sake of pushing propaganda. And that's what Democrats want the media to do. That's what Nancy Pelosi wants Jake Tapper to do. Don't be a journalist, okay, when you are interviewing Nancy Pelosi, right? If you're not a full-blown Democrat Party propagandist, if you're not kissing her ass throughout the whole interview, she's going to snap on you and pretend herself you are a Trump apologist. You're a Trump operative, right? That's what she does. That's what she does. She bullies these so-called journalists into submission. It's actually crazy to watch. You see it in real time. She's done this multiple times on MSNBC and CNN, two of the most Democrat-friendly networks. Apparently not friendly enough for Nancy Pelosi. Not friendly enough for Nancy Pelosi. So hey, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.